Hi everyone, I'm back today with some more Arteza art products, and rather than plan out in detail a certain project with this, I thought I'd open it up and go through and play a bit and give you guys an idea of what I am seeing in real time. I have a 3-pack of watercolor paper pads here, and I have opened one of them and started playing in one. I couldn't resist. These are great. They're perforated, so my thought is that it will be fairly easy to take out pages that I like and fold them and put them in as pages into the journals that I make, and even punch holes in them and pop them into my planner, which is one of the things I'm going to do here today. And I really do like the quality of these. 5.5 by 8.5. They should fit perfectly into my A5 planner, and I just really think it's a great size to be portable, to take where I want and use. So we'll dive into these a bit in just a minute. I also have a 6-pack of water brushes, and these are great because you can just fill them right up with water, and the edge has a brush on it, and you can squeeze it here, and once you become a little more adept at it than I am, you can drag the watercolor and apply it as if you had a paintbrush dipped in water, except you don't have to keep dipping it. So we'll play with these a bit as well. And these I haven't opened yet. Now, I've played around with a smaller pack of woodless watercolor pencils, but these are regular watercolor pencils, and it's a much bigger pack. So let's see what we got here. Okay, it is hinged. Wow. That is so awesome. Yeah, that's great. Whoop. And there is a 3rd layer underneath. So 72 colors. Wow, that's going to be a really big palette. I don't know if I'm going to, yeah, I guess I will need to do a conventional palette, but I won't do that at this moment. So let me set some stuff aside, and let's see if we can start playing with these and have some fun. I wish I had caught that last part on camera, what I just did. I got out my old school, pencil sharpener, which latches right on the side of my counter. And I was going to sharpen 1 or 2 of these up and turn the camera back on. And a little bit of the stuff poofed out of here from my Arteza woodless watercolor pencils, which have no wood in it, which means everything that was in here actually was paint substances. And somebody, I think it was CJ, suggested that I save those so I could try to paint a mosaic with them. And yeah, they went everywhere. I saved the rest of them. I'm going to see what I can do with that later. That should be interesting. So I'm going to hook this up and sharpen a few of these pencils, and we'll play. Well, I've been having fun. I have not been doing what I thought I'd be doing with these, but I've been having a lot of fun. I've experimented with creating a background with the pencils and stamping on it, and then using them to color in some of the stamping. And I didn't like how that came out. It was me, not the pencils. But I did really like this. I took some archival ink, black ink, and some really pretty new stamps, and been playing here. And I like the way that's going on. I also made a palette in my big A5 file effects. This is the woodless Arteza, and these are the regular wood watercolor pencils. So I'm not sure if we can really fairly compare the way they behave from these two palettes, because this is not watercolor paper and this is. While I've been playing with my Arteza watercolor supplies, I took one of these rotating caddies. They have them at several art stores. I got mine at Joann's. And I took my brush pens and the fine line markers. And here's some more of the brush pens. And these are the new watercolor pencils, the 72 that I just got, along with the water brushes from Arteza, and then my woodless watercolor pencils and my black fine liners. So essentially I've got everything that I could want to do my watercoloring in all my different mediums with this stuff right here, and I can, you know, pull this front and center at any time and have at it with whatever I'm working on at the moment. So I have been playing quite a bit with some different things, and I thought I'd show you what I'm doing. I've printed a sheet on regular, this is regular copy paper, so we're talking thin paper that you would use to print from any type of regular printer. And I've talked a bit with Wendy Connors Beckett, who is, as many of you know, a real artist. She is a professional painter and has sold paintings and is just incredibly talented. And I, of course, am just experimenting and starting out. But with relation to junk journals and planners, how do we water paint on paper that's not watercolor paper for things that go into our journals and into our planners? So that is a point of interest for me. You know, I could probably figure out how to feed watercolor paper, heavy watercolor paper, through my printer and start experimenting with printing these images on it. But I'm interested in knowing how I can take these, find a way to take all of these watercolor mediums and put them on this paper without it rumpling or being dramatically out of shape. So one of the things I've discovered is, let me just zoom you out here a bit. I've got some water, and I picked up some new inexpensive watercolor brushes here. And one of the things I've found is that if I take a watercolor brush and dip it into water, and I have a little dish here that I can just blot it off so it's wet but not sopping, dripping wet, and I paint the end of my watercolor pencils, that, look at that, it actually is a wonderful palette. And I can pull it and fade the colors just as if I pulled it off a regular palette of colors. And I got to tell you, this was a game-changing discovery for me. You know, I'm still new at trying to figure out how wet and how thick to get the paint onto the brush, but it's no different than if I was dabbing it into a pie or a cake of watercolors. And I'm so happy with this, because what happens is it goes on the page and the brush is just barely damp. So I'm not putting a lot of wetness onto the page to rumple it or to cause me any worries at all about how it's going to perform. And I'm so happy with that. This is great. So now I just want to print out all these black and white things, some of the book plates that I've done recently in my shop. I need book plates in a lot of books and journals that I've made, or things that I know that I want to keep. And I would love to paint them. So this is wonderful. Yeah, conversely, if I had taken a sheet and taken the same, let me find an orange that hasn't been wetted with water. So this is a slightly different color. I know that this is a little wet still, so it's not going to go on the same way. If I had taken this and colored this in a bit, and then used a brush in order to pull the color, I'm immediately getting at least 3 or 4 times the water that I had by just barely taking a wet brush, and I'm not able to pull that as well. It's just a completely different experience with it, and this is wonderful. So I can use that to spread it that way. And what that will allow me to do is to play with coloring books. I'm really not, because my time is limited between the garden and junk journal making and courses that I'm putting together and making digis and such, I don't have a lot of time to just color, but I found a gnome coloring book by Zendoodle, and I can't wait to dive into this with my markers, with my paints, and I've been experimenting a little bit about how I can paint on this paper, again, without it rumpling. It is thick. It's a good quality paper. It's not as thick as cardstock. Let's see if we've got a thickness on this. No, it doesn't say how thick the paper is, but it is not made for watercolors as such. And I have begun with this method of using a brush and just playing here. And I'm going to be able to watercolor in my gnome coloring book, which makes me quite happy. I can take my wet brush and I like this. It allows me to move my brush around, and it's kind of like, well, you can fade it a bit. It gives you a lot more control. Gives me a lot more control. Now, I'm an amateur painter, so I know just enough to be dangerous to myself, but I'm going to have no problem with being able to use these to have quite a lot of fun. I even pre-punch this to stick it in my A5 when I'm finished, so that I can fold it and write my lists on the other side. but it's really not rumpling the paper at all. That is where I bent it, actually pulling the page out of the book. But I'm looking forward to playing, you know, because I have all that free time. But I need to play sometimes in the evenings and occasional afternoons, and I love doing this. So I'm having a fabulous time. I can't thank Arteza enough for sending me more supplies to play with and explore. And I will continue to look for ways that we can work these watercolors, the pencils, the woodless pencils, the brush pens into our junk journals and ephemera that we like to put in them. And I'll continue to share with you guys as I make these discoveries. I will put the links below to the supplies that I've used here, to the water brushes and the pencils, and these wonderful pads of paper, the watercolor paper. Really had a lot of fun. And you know what I find is you can stamp in these with the archival stamps. So essentially making your own coloring books on the watercolor paper if you don't want to experiment with regular paper or other medium. And I've really had a good time just playing with all kinds of the different pencils, and then stamping on top of them, and stamping and then applying them over to see which order I wanted to do it in. I found out that the black fine line pens run, so you have to wait until everything is dry before you go back and outline using those pens. That was a good lesson. But I used the water brush pens with these and just stamped right over them with archival ink. Yeah, so it's been a fun experiment, and I do love these pads. I really do. So links are below, and I will be back with you guys in the near future. I have a whole lot of other shares. I've got several other Arteza things I'm playing with that are completely different than watercolors, and I got another journal in the mail I need to share with you guys. So I will be back probably very soon, maybe today. Thanks for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.